You heard me. Have you ever looked at a rabbit and thought it needs a desert? Me neither. I see rabbits in my yard. They're eating my kale. But I've never seen one and thought, you'd love the Gobi Desert. No shade, no fancy salads, just a whole lot of sand. What if I told you someone thought releasing millions of rabbits into a desert was brilliant? I'm not making this up. It's a real story. Someone looked at an empty desert and said, this place needs bunnies. Lots and lots of bunnies. It sounds like a joke, but it's true. Why would anyone do this? Stick with me. We'll figure out why this happened and what went down when the bunnies hit the sand. So what was causing this giant, expanding sandbox? It wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of problems. For starters, there was overgrazing. Without those plant roots acting like a natural net, the soil just turned to dust and blew away. People were trying to grow crops in places that weren't really meant for it. After a few seasons, the soil would be completely exhausted. It's like when I try to put together IKEA furniture and I have all these leftover screws, creating massive dust storms that could reach Beijing and cross oceans. They were desperate for a solution. Any solution. The government had already launched massive projects like the Great Green Wall, which involved planting millions, even billions of trees to create a barrier against the desert. And while that sounds great, it's incredibly difficult. You can't just stick a tree in the sand and hope for the best. It needs water, care, and the right conditions. Okay, let's talk about deserts. When I think of a desert, I think of sand, cacti, and maybe a roadrunner being chased by a coyote. Beep, beep! Deserts are defined by their lack of rainfall. They are incredibly dry ecosystems. The plants that do live there are super tough. They have deep roots to find water or waxy leaves to keep from drying out. That thin layer of vegetation is the glue that holds the entire ecosystem together. It stops the soil from blowing away. Now, China has a lot of deserts. The Gobi, the Taklamakan, they weren't always barren. Thousands of years ago, many of these areas were grasslands or savannas. Over time, due to climate shifts and human activity, they dried out. Desertification started to eat up farmland, bury homes, and create refugees. The government tried planting trees and building barriers, but the desert kept coming. They needed something that could work with the harsh environment, not just fight against it. So with all these problems, someone in a meeting must have said, "What about rabbits?" And I bet everyone else in the room just stared at them. Rabbits? The cute fluffy things that eat carrots and wiggle their noses? First, they dig. They're nature's little excavators. Their digging would loosen up compacted soil, allowing air and scarce moisture to penetrate. Second, rabbit droppings are an amazing natural fertilizer. They're full of nutrients. As rabbits wandered, they would distribute pellets and help seeds sprout, essentially tilling and fertilizing the land for free. They didn't choose fragile Angora bunnies. They chose hardy, arid-adapted breeds. On paper, the plan was simple. Release these bunnies into degraded areas and let nature do the rest. But there was a real danger. Rabbits reproduce. A lot. Think Australia. It was an out-of-the-box idea. A bioengineering solution with floppy ears and a cotton tail. It was a hop of faith. So the decision was made. The bunnies were a go. This wasn't a small-scale experiment. We're talking about a massive operation. Trucks, crates, logistics. You open the cages and a furry tide pours onto the sand. They didn't dump them all in one spot. Releases were placed in huge fenced enclosures across degraded land. The idea was to concentrate their effects and monitor outcomes. Inside these zones, the rabbits were on their own. Survive, dig, eat, and multiply. When rare rains came, water pooled in burrows and moisture soaked into the ground. Seeds that had lain dormant began to sprout. Rabbit pellets enriched the soil, digging mixed nutrients into the ground. Tiny patches of green began to appear. And then, as all who know rabbits knew, they bred. A lot. Fences weren't perfect. Rabbits slipped under and out. Once out, nothing stopped them. Few predators remained to control numbers. And the rabbits had plenty to eat, roots and shrubs. Local people watched in disbelief as rabbits moved from being ecosystem helpers to agricultural pests. The solution was becoming a new problem, both miracle and curse. So let's grade this project. What was the final report card? On the plus side, rabbits did improve soil structure, water retention, and nutrients in many places. That allowed successful planting of hardy shrubs, which in turn helped stabilize soil and prevent erosion. In some test zones, vegetation cover increased significantly, a real win for creative thinking. But the minuses are big. Introducing a non-native, highly reproductive species is risky. Populations escaped and became pests. They caused agricultural damage and competed with native wildlife. The project traded one ecological problem for another in places. The program has been modified. Rabbits are now used more controlled, kept in enclosures temporarily, removed before numbers spiral. The experiment opened thinking to other ecosystem engineers: ants, earthworms, fungi, beneficial bacteria. It's a cautionary tale about unintended consequences and the humility needed when meddling with complex ecosystems. As one farmer said, "The rabbits gave us back the grass, but then they tried to take everything else." If you had a problem that big, what would you be willing to try? Would you be willing to unleash the bunnies?